What is the biggest risk you've ever taken in your business? As we approach the end of the year, as you can tell by my lovely Christmas decor in the background, this is the time of year where we really start to reflect back on the previous year, how things have been going, but almost more importantly, thinking ahead to next year and what are we going to do differently? How are we going to grow? So, I wanted to talk about risk. And there's a specific quote that we're going to be kind of basing this conversation around. It comes from our buddy over the head of Meta, Mark Zuckerberg. And what he said is the biggest risk is not taking any risk. In a world that's changing really quickly, the only strategy that's guaranteed to fail is not taking any risks. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. But before we dive into that, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and ring that little notification bell so that you never miss a tutorial or upload. So this is a topic that I find really interesting because I'm a naturally risk-averse person, which I know seems very opposite of being an entrepreneur. And I guess in a lot of ways, it is very opposite. But I also think that my risk-averse nature is probably why I choose to grow my business the way that I have been, which is almost like it's a side hustle, right? Having a day job, having my corporate job, having that steady income so that I don't have to put all of that pressure on my business. And, that is something that I'm going to do for as long as it's possible for me to do both things. But at some point, it's not going to be possible anymore, either because the corporate world changes, which it does all the time, or because my business grows to a point where it just requires too much of my actual attention, even with all of my automation and productivity tools and all of that. There are certain aspects of my business that require me. And same thing goes for you. So I've been thinking about this quote kind of from that perspective lately. I mean, obviously, there's all different kinds of risks that we take in business. I mean, just starting a business alone is a risk. And taking the step to tell other people that we're starting a business, that's actually sometimes a bigger risk. Because it's one thing to kind of quietly start doing stuff on your own, especially if you can kind of do it off to the side where your people in your circle don't see what's going on. Because then if it fails, what's the harm, right? Nobody knew that you were doing it anyway, so no big deal. But the second that it gets to the point where you start either marketing it in front of people that might actually know you, or it grows to a point where you have to make space for it, make time for it, and so you have to tell other people, that's a risk too. And that's a risk that I think a lot of solopreneurs are not quite ready for sometimes. But it's a great risk to take because you never know who might be the person that sends your next customer to you. So if you aren't willing to let people know that you're doing something and what you're doing, how are they going to know to refer someone to you? So it's super important to let people know what you're up to. But for me, I'm starting to get to a point where I'm thinking about, what if I stepped away from that steady, reliable income and stepped into complete entrepreneurship, just working for myself. And that is a scary, scary risk. And it's one that I think people really, really need to think about before they take that step. Now, there are a lot of stories about people. I think first person that comes to mind is Pat Flynn. He talks all the time about how his business, what he does now, would never have happened if he hadn't gotten laid off from his dream job. I think it was like 8 or so years ago. He was an architect, I want to say. And he got laid off, and at that moment, you just feel like, oh, it's the end of the world. Like, what am I going to do? Everything is falling apart around me. But he had this inspiration. He had this vision of something that he could create. And one of the things that he did, which is something that I am certainly doing because I know how much it can relieve that pressure, is he didn't put all of his eggs into one new basket. He found ways to kind of diversify and have multiple streams of income. And that's something that he talks about a lot. And something that I'm really thinking about as I think about taking this risk of potentially jumping into working 100% for myself and being just self-employed. There is so much that goes along with that, even more so than just, income coming in, things like that. So it's definitely not something that I'm taking lightly as a decision. And it's not something that I've even decided to do yet. But If you're thinking about taking a risk that's big like that, or like a big investment into maybe joining a program of some sort, like a mastermind or something like that, and it's going to be a big financial risk, there's a lot of things that you need to think about. And I'm not here to tell you, yes, take those risks. You need to weigh the pros and cons. You need to be responsible and you need to be smart about it. But at the same time, don't let those doubts hold you back. Because, like Mark says, if you don't take any risks at all, well, that's the only time that you're guaranteed to fail. It's like what I think it's Wayne Gretzky that said you miss 100% of the shots that you never take. Yeah, you have to be willing to take a risk, but they should be calculated risks. And I think that's kind of what's coming up for me as I think about this quote. Yeah, there are a lot of risks that you could take, and there are big risks and little risks and all of that. But it's true that the biggest risk you can take is to never take any risks at all. I mean, there's all kinds of risks that we take as a business owner, big ones, little ones. But I think, there's a couple that are really key milestone risks. And obviously, the biggest one is becoming a business owner, starting in the first place. And if that's where you're at right now, if you're watching this and you're just thinking like, oh, I want to start a business. I love doing this thing and I'd love for it to make me some income or become what I do for a living. Well, then let me just sit here and tell you right now that is a risk that you absolutely should take. And I don't say that lightly because obviously I just said you need to weigh the pros and cons of everything and whatever. But because I know that it is absolutely possible to start a business and grow a business without being irresponsible and, walking away from income that your family or you, if it's just you, needs in order to be secure. It is absolutely possible to do both. So if you've got that thing that you just keep thinking, I love doing this, or I've always wanted to do this, I've always wanted to try having a business, absolutely take the leap, do it, because that is a risk you will always regret not taking. It may not work out, but that's why you don't walk away from security in order to do it. You start slow, you start small, you put those blinders on, and you don't worry about comparing yourself to other business owners that you see, especially the ones that are out there saying that they quit their job way before they were ready to start a business and all of that. You don't have to do it that way. You can absolutely do it at the same time as being responsible and keeping your steady, reliable income coming in. I would love to be able to show you that it is absolutely possible and how it's possible to do both things and to start this business and grow it at your own pace, because that is a risk that you absolutely should take. When it comes to all the other risks, I really think that, I mean, maybe this is just me and my natural tendency to be risk averse, but I really think that, yes, you need to take leaps and take risks and do things that take you outside of your comfort zone sometimes and things like that. You never know what opportunity might be waiting there. I mean, my very first video that I posted here on YouTube, that's how I felt. It was incredibly risky for me to not only put videos out here and become a content creator, but to do it face on camera and all of that and not to be anonymous about it. That was another risk that I took, but a calculated one that I am so, so glad that I took, because look where I am now. Now, am I at a place where I have hundreds of thousands of subscribers and, a huge channel? No, but my channel is growing and I'm happy with where it's at. And I'm so glad that almost 2 years ago, I made that decision and I weighed those pros and cons and I took that risk. So I guess what I'm saying is there that little nagging thought in the back of your mind, that risk that you've been feeling like you're supposed to take, but you've just been holding back for some reason? If so, and I know there is, because whether you're already a business owner now or you aren't yet, I know that risk is there and you've just been pushing it down because it's scary, and I totally get it. But whatever it is, drop it in the comments section so that I and everyone else can cheer you on as you take that risk and step out into the unknown.